Happening as it's happening right now around the NBA. Hey, OKC, why so sad?
Next question.
Sekou's here with the latest MVP ladder. Sekou, why no LeBron? Why no Jokic? And why no Paul George?
Next question.
Boogie's debut tonight. Will it work in the Bay?
Next question.
Well, we've got all the answers. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll talk with the newsmakers and news reporters with opinion, perspective, and predictions. This is 10 Before Tip, presented by Ford. Happy Friday. Come on in as we discuss the biggest stories of the day and set the table for the night in the NBA. Glad you could be with us. I'm Jared Greenberg. 10 Before Tip number one. It's been nearly a year in the making. Following a grueling recovery from a torn Achilles, tonight is the night Demarcus Cousins makes his much anticipated Warriors debut. It's what's happening right now.
As long as the guys in the room know what the situation is, we know what the ultimate goal is, that's all that matters. So we're going to really determine judgment from day to day.
I think you'll ignore coverage tomorrow, good or bad?
Oh, I don't watch it. Yeah, so say what you want.
Boogie and the Warriors at Staples Center to take on the Clippers tonight. Demarcus Cousins slated to be in the starting lineup, in our starting lineup each and every Friday from NBA.com. Sekou Smith and our West Coast reporter joining us from Staples Center tonight. The epicenter of the NBA is, of course, the great Sean Powell. Okay, Sean, let's get the vibe, let's get the anticipation, set the table and the mood for us of what's happening tonight with Demarcus Cousins joining this incredible all-star lineup.
Well, evidently everybody is optimistic. Otherwise, he would not be on the floor. I think initially Steve Kerr said Demarcus Cousins probably wouldn't be coming back until the all-star break. But here he is, and not only is he back, he's in the starting lineup. I would say, however, he should wear a question mark on his jersey, or maybe a bunch of question marks, maybe make him look like the Riddler in the next Batman movie, only because we just don't have any answers right now. We don't know how he's going to fit in. We don't know whether he can keep up with the pace, how his body's going to respond. We're not going to know tonight. We're not going to know next week. But however, for the Warriors' sake, hopefully we know pretty soon what they have in DeMarcus Cousins and how it all works.
This is one of the stranger things I can remember, too, Jared, Sean, a guy coming back from the kind of injury that he had, and there's been no pretense. Not only are you starting, we're going to play you and let you get it all out, let you, shake all the rust out in the midst of a season where the Warriors don't have that cushion like they've had in years past. It's going to be very interesting. What if Boogie Cousins comes back and disrupts things? What if Steph is no longer able to get the good looks that he's getting because Boogie's out there and everything is off? The chemistry is not right. I'm very curious to see what they'll do if this goes sideways. Do you course change and come back and say, you know what, maybe we'll bring Boogie off the bench, or maybe we'll do something different?
What's sideways?
Sideways is you don't play as well as they've played here these last, 9, 10 games.
Right.
I mean, Boogie has been a ball-dominant player in this league, in the time that he's become an all-star and become one of the best big men in the game. You can't ask Boogie to come back and play against what his nature is and expect it not to be an issue, or at least for there to be some friction.
Sean, you were at shoot-around today where Steve Kerr was discussing how the Warriors will use him, and it was interesting to hear him say no minutes restriction tonight for Boogie Cousins.
Well, Boogie quickly chimed in and says, I'm not going to be out there for 30 minutes. I think it's understood that you're just going to see how he responds. I mean, I would imagine tonight, maybe 20 minutes, see if he has his wind, and they'll just take it from there. The beauty of it is that he's coming to a team where Steph Curry is probably playing the best of his career. Kevin Durant is on MVP level. They're just a few days removed from blowing out the Nuggets, probably their biggest competition in the West. And also, they don't need DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is a luxury for this team. They won championships without him. They can win another championship this year with or without him.
Well, listen, this is a great opportunity. The last time the Warriors were at Staples against the Clippers, that was blow-up night, right? That was Katie and Draymond getting into it. So now you have an opportunity to kind of wipe that memory away. And if Biggie, let's say Boogie goes out and has a monster night,
right,
then you get a lift off of that, and you get an opportunity to not only feel good about Boogie's, debut and integrating him into this lineup going into Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, but also the stretch run between now and All-Star break. If Boogie can find a rhythm in this little patch of the schedule, that sets you up for a great stretch run if you're the Warriors.
I think we all agree that this is also a great opportunity for Boogie to cash in, right, when it comes to unrestricted free agency this summer. If he is not only healthy, plays within the system, puts up big numbers, and shows he can be a good team player, then there's going to be 30 teams out there that want to pay him as much money as they physically can. But let's go here. What would be, if you had to put your finger on one thing here, Sean, what's your biggest concern for Boogie Cousins within the Warriors system starting tonight?
Well, obviously where he fits, you have a lot of players in this team who are offensive-minded. Boogie is offensive-minded. He's an offensive player, not necessarily a defensive center. And also, just as you said, Jared, this is a money year for him. You have to remember, last summer, he had no offers. Nobody wanted him. At least they weren't going to pay him any kind of big money. So he had to pick up the phone and call the Warriors. How does he handle that dynamic? The fact that he's going to come to a team where he's not going to be the first, second, maybe not even third option, but yet impress other teams enough where he can get his free agent jackpot. That'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Thank you. Your one concern?
My one concern is that Boogie doesn't fit into the flow that the Warriors are playing with right now. It's not just about getting up three-point shots or playing at tempo. It's about ball movement and body movement. Is Boogie going to be able to fit in that mix in terms of Steph's great off the ball. Kevin Durant can play long stretches without dominating the ball. Boogie's going to have to get minutes on the floor, Jared, where he's not touching the ball for stretches, unlike any time in his career. Even with New Orleans last year when he and Anthony Davis were sharing, a lot of the load, he was clearly the 1A or 1B, however you want to, determine it. But now, as Sean said, he could be the third or fourth option on a given night. How does he handle that?
I would say, I'll throw out the idea, too, of what happens at the end of games. If Steve Kerr is clearly going to have Steph, Clay, and Durant, what if he decides to have Iguodala and Draymond, who he's liked to have out there closing games, and not Draymond, and not have Demarcus in a night where he's putting up big numbers? But that's better for the team. How does he react? I think it'll be interesting to watch. Sekou's going to stick around. Sean Powell will be checking out your work at NBA.com, covering tonight's Demarcus Cousins debut for the Warriors at the Clippers. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
10 before tip number 2. It's star power.
I've seen everything you can see defensively throughout this entire year. Literally everything. The guys just leaving their man running in double team, trapping, everything.
The beard is the hottest man on planet Earth right now. Sekou Smith's MVP ladder on NBA.com. Here's the latest list. Welcome back to the list, Joel Embiid. He's in at number 5. At number 4, Kawhi stays put, as does Steph Curry at number 3. And here comes the shakeup. Giannis moving back from 1 to 2. And, of course, the bearded one himself for the third time this year is at Sekou Smith's top spot on the MVP ladder. There's no doubt what Harden has been doing with all of the injuries. But they lost the other night. Is this almost like a precursor to like, okay, yeah, we get it, and you're deserving now, but
no, it's one game. Right. In a game they should have won if we really look at it. Up the way they were at the end of regulation, you could look at it and
maybe
say,
drive to the basket once.
Yeah, James Harden maybe ran out of gas, or maybe it took all that time for Brooklyn to actually double team him and get the ball out of his hands, make somebody else try and beat him. Right. But Jared, I'd be remiss if we found a way not to have James Harden at the number 1 spot right now. You can't play this well for this long in this league under these circumstances and somebody else be in that spot, especially not when you're the reigning Kia MVP. I mean, we do need to show him a little respect in that regard. But I think this thing gets really interesting now. Steph is back playing at a nuclear level. Giannis has been there all season long. And what's going to happen when LeBron James finally makes his return back to that Lakers lineup and gets to the base?
All right, so I'm going to be overly optimistic here. I'm feeling really good on this Friday. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what's going on in my world, but I really like your list, and I love that Steph is up to 3 because I think we need to appreciate how good he's been. The one player I'm curious about is choosing Embiid over the likes of either Jokic or Paul George to put in your top 5?
Well, a lot of it, you look at and how have their teams fared in recent games, obviously, in the last week. Embiid's team is rolling. And I thought Embiid showed me something playing through that sore back and performing the way he did against Indiana. Jokic got exposed a little bit the other night against the Warriors. Great player, having a great season, but you realize the distance between himself and maybe Steph and KD and players on that level when you see him in a head-to-head matchup. Paul George, of course, is suffering from the Thunder's lack of success here recently. But all those guys are in that same mix. They could, if this was MVP musical chairs, these guys would all be standing and sitting, standing and sitting.
Hold on. If that's exactly what this is, that's exactly what you do every Friday.
And I'm the music, and I got my hands on the music.
Right,
so
you're the DJ.
It's up to me. It's up to me.
Time before tip number 3. It's what's buzzing today around the NBA.
The real measurement of a man is where he stands in adversity. So when adversity hits, it's nothing better, in my opinion, to see how you act and see what you do as a team, as a unit, as a man. So I'm looking forward to it.
Russ with a little more to say there than what we played at the top of the show when he didn't want to talk about him being able to actually hit 3 free throws, which had been a problem for him earlier in the year with his awful free throw shooting. OKC, though, losing to the LeBron-less Lakers. What did that game last night at home tell you about the Thunder, who were supposed to be the best defense in basketball, right after they got blown out by one of the worst offenses in basketball, the Hawks, a couple of nights earlier?
Well, it told me.
What do you smash, Chuck?
Oh, dude, I eat anything. I mean, you can't get this fast.
What do you smash?
Pizza, steak, chicken,
Krispy
Kreme donuts. Like, Ernest, sometimes when I'm eating the Pringles, I'll eat half the can.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, it's just rude of me to leave a couple chips in the can. So
Well, if it's half, it's not a couple, but.
I remember last year when I came back from All-Star, I was tired. I was tired. And it's tough because it's one of my favorite events. It's my favorite event of the entire weekend.
The one thing that Demarcus doesn't get credit for is he enjoys playing basketball. He likes to go in the gym. He likes to mess around in the gym. He likes to goof around in the gym. Maybe a little bit too much, but he enjoys playing basketball. And his misery has come because he's been on a losing team most of his career. And he's not going to be on a losing team. He's going to be on a winning team.
I know there's going to be instant judgment, analysis, criticism. We're either going to be, at the end of the night, unbeatable or in big trouble.
Let's give you a stat stuffer on the Brooklyn Nets, who tonight are in Orlando. Look at this Nets team. And oh, by the way, remember that spectacular James Harden performance the other night? The Rockets lost. The Nets beat them. They've won 15 of their last 20, and they are at 500 for the first time this late in the season since the 12-13 season. Let's go around the NBA and talk more about these red-hot Nets with America's favorite analyst, Sarah Kustok, on the greatest League Pass watch in basketball right now. Sarah, thank you.
Jared, thank you I thought you were going to say on the greatest show ever. I'm not sure I made an appearance yet on 10 Before Tip, so I feel honored. This is a big day for me.
And you just made our new marketing campaign. Thank you, Sarah. It'll be our first, but we have a new one. Sarah, thank you for joining us. And I'm wondering here, as we're within 3 weeks of the trade deadline and we're wondering what the Nets may do or not do, what's just the overall vibe of this team who really is shocking the NBA right now?
You know what, Jared, I think that's why it's interesting talking about the trade deadline and what moves potentially could be made, what, decisions you need to make in terms of filling up spots. The one thing I will note throughout this course of the last 20 games, this team has extraordinary chemistry. They've figured out what their strengths are for each individual player. They understand how to play well with one another. And, it's a lot of those cliches you hear and talk about with teams, but there is entire buy-in. If you look throughout the course of this whole stretch, there is different players that have stepped up at different moments. You've had different lineups closing out the game. They've dealt with injuries, but they understand the system, how they're going to play. It's all about playing through the pass. They've improved defensively, and it's some of those little things and some of those players that do the stuff that don't pop up on the stat sheet that made making the biggest difference with this group.
And while nobody's going to feel sorry for Brooklyn, because every team goes through its own issues, right, you have to say the Nets are doing this probably without their best player right now, Karis LeVert, who got off to a scorching hot start.
Well, and that's the thing, Jared. The offense was really predicated on playing through Karis LeVert. He was the guy who had the ball in his hands most. He was able to create for himself, for others, and excellent defensively. So when he went down, it really was a shift on how this team's going to play, who's going to be their go-to guy at the end of games. And of course, coming out of the day, they dealt with a horrible stretch. They lost 8 straight games. A lot of those were close games and a lack of execution down the stretch, but they have figured it out. So they're without Karis LeVert. They've been without Allen Crabbe for a long stretch. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is back and Jared Dudley out now, but just it's been a mix and match. But it goes back to the fact they all can play multiple positions. So a lot of times when you have guys that are positionless and can play on the ball, off the ball, it certainly helps.
In the first response you gave us, you mentioned buy-in. The first name that popped into my head when you said that is D'Angelo Russell. Can you give some perspective from being inside and with the team every day? What has changed? What has he done to perform at such a high level this year?
Jared, I've been around this individual since he came here to Brooklyn and how he's continued to figure out what Kenny Atkinson's asked of him. But if you'll watch how he plays, and it's very different than systematically what the Nets have tried to do before, which is getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, shooting 3-point shots. He's now, I believe, made the most 2-point shots in the league at this point. And Kenny Atkinson has allowed him to play to his strengths. His strengths are being a crafty, shifty guy who works the ball screen in the pick and roll, gets to his mid-range game, finds his floater around the basket, but he's really doing what he does best. He's got excellent court vision, but on top of all of that, his teammates love him. He's a good teammate. He does the right things. He's there for one another. He hasn't closed out a lot of these games, and it has not seemed to matter, but he's someone, too, who has improved on the defensive end, and that's been a big aspect of it. He may not be a great defender, but working with what he has, he's improved and been very solid in that area, and that allows him in many cases to stay on the floor and also with limiting his turnovers. But I've been ultimately impressed with just the professional D'Angelo Russell is and the type of character that he's brought to this group.
Ladies and gentlemen, making her 10 before tip debut.
Yes.
Superstar analyst, Sekou. Thank
Jared,
you so much for joining us.
I hope you'll have me back. Thank you.
We will.
Thank you.
You can guarantee that. From Sarah, we go to What's at Stake with Sekou Smith, NBA.com. Let's look at the Eastern Conference standings. The difference between the Nets in the 7th spot and the Wizards in the 11th spot is just 3 games in the loss column. So when we look at these teams and we think, okay, the top of the East is really formidable right now, 1 through 4. Which one of these bottom-tier teams could do something between now and February 7th trade deadline where you might think twice about making this a 4-game sweep, 1 through 4, against one of these teams in the first round of the playoffs?
Well, if we're including all the way down to Washington, Jared, which they could be the wild card team in the league if they were to make a move now. The way they've played since John Wall went down, you give them a piece that's much needed, somebody that could come in and help jumpstart what they got going on. Bradley Beal playing the way he has. They could be a team that really threatens somebody. The other one's Detroit. If they could just find a way to figure out how to get that perimeter group of players they have to play at a higher level and more consistent, the way Blake and DeAndre, and Andre Drummond can cause problems for somebody in a playoff scenario where they didn't make it, that's another team to me that could cause serious problems for somebody in a playoff setting.
Sekou, we got more coming up on 10 before tip. Luke Kennard, Duke legend, on the Detroit Pistons. We're coming back with plenty more on 10 before tip. We'll take you courtside, show you who's going, tell you about some injury updates and everything else you need to know. Sekou and Jared coming back live at 10 before tip, presented by Ford.
Go to market, go to market, go to market, go to market, go, go, go.
Demarcus Cousins posting this on his Twitter feed earlier today. Oh, yeah, you better believe Demarcus is fired up for tonight.
Kids got moves. That's all I know. Moves.
I thought they were going to show a video of me dancing, but got disappointed. Demarcus didn't want to put that up. Here's the Warriors Monstars lineup tonight. Look at all these All-Stars. Demarcus joined in the starting lineup against the Clippers tonight. Go, Demarcus, go. With Draymond, with Durant, with Clay, with Steph Curry.
I mean, the combination, of all these different All-Stars is one thing, but it's the fit, Jared. I want to see how they fit because we've had great starting fives before in this league. There have been really potent, star-studded, starting fives. But I can't remember the last time we saw a group with this many All-Star nods under their belt. This is unbelievable.
Take you courtside, give you a look at DeMar DeRozan, whose Spurs will take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is going to sound weird. The Spurs have lost 2 straight at Minnesota. Interesting, because they beat them 11 straight at home. We've got Jason Tatum, Memphis at Boston tonight.
Everything good in Boston?
I think so.
Everything better?
I think they've won 7 in a row at home. We'll see how they fare tonight. Sekou, we'll see you on Game Time. Put a tie on, would you?
I'm going to work
Get professional.
on it. Listen.
You'll be joined by the dope
tie
professor himself, David Griffin. He knows how to tie a tie. Matt Weiner along as well. Game Time Live. Have a great weekend, everybody.